Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about classification. You're probably wondering, what is classification? Classification is actually grouping things by similarities. And we're going to talk about how this relates to science and why it's important to scientists and biologists and people who study and research out in the field. Classification is just an easy way of organizing things. Classification allows us to understand and find things a lot easier than if we weren't organized. Um, in addition, things that are commonly classified, think of when you go into your clothing stores. Think about when you go into your grocery stores, when you go into Best Buy or Target. Every time you go in, there's a specific section you want to look for. If you're looking for clothes, I can go to, because I'm a guy, I'm going to go to the men's section. And then let's say I'm looking for sportswear versus dressy stuff. I'm going to go into the sports section. That way I can find my athletic wear and stuff like that. And it categorizes. Think of it as larger brackets that go into subgroups and smaller brackets and make it easier. So classification starts with broad categories and gets increasingly specific. So like I was giving you an example about the athletic wear in Target, clothing, let's say I go into a clothing store. I go into the men's clothing, I go to the men's sportswear, then I go into the spring sportswear, then I look for my size, then I look for the color I want. See how it increasingly gets more specific, and then I get down to that one specific thing that I'm searching for? Now, why is this important? Okay, scientists use this all the time. In actually in real life science, we use a dichotomous key. Di meaning two, cotomous key. It's simple questioning of just yes or no. It helps us figure out what an unknown organism is according to structural and physical characteristics, and each step of the dichotomous key only compares one characteristic at a time. Very simple. We're going to go over an example right now. So here's an example. I have my little lizard. You always start at the top, and then you work your way following the instructions. So does that lizard have a backbone, or does it not have a backbone? Okay, it's got a backbone. You see how it says go to number two? Go to number two. Does it have wings, or does it not have wings? It doesn't have wings, so I'm going to follow the instructions and go to three. Does it have legs, or does it have no legs? It does have legs, so I'm going to follow instructions again and go to four. Does it have a shell? No. So I'm going to go to the no shell, and I figure out that it is a lizard. I highlighted all of the actual steps that I followed to get to the fact that that image is an image of a lizard. Let's bring you back a little bit into history. So the whole classification idea actually started with Aristotle. Hopefully you've heard of him. He's a pretty famous guy in Greek history. He developed the first widely accepted classification system, but there was a little bit of a couple problems with his classification system. Firsthand, he devised everything into two groups, plants and animals, and then he even went on to use physical characteristics and habitat differences. Problem is, he was grouping things together that shouldn't really be grouped together. And for example, bats, birds, and flying insects were classified to be part of the same group only because they could fly. Whereas in actuality, they are three completely different organisms and definitely do not belong in the same group as one another. Why didn't Aristotle actually classify microorganisms? Hopefully you came up with the idea that he did not have microscopes. It was 300 BC after all. He wasn't up to our current technology standards, and I told you advancements in science are hindered by what technology we have and how specific the data is and what we can do with our technology. But he opened up the ground for Carolus and Linnaeus, a Swedish botanist from the 1700s, who came up with the idea of binomial nomenclature. Now, bi means two and nomial means name, so it was a two-name system that actually came down to the genus and species of the actual organism. So basically, every single species, you can actually give them a scientific name based on their genus and their species. Really cool. I'm going to give you an example in two slides of us. But first, we'll go over the fact that the first name came from the genus name, called the group name of of all similar organisms, and then species is even more specific. Now, this is based off of the idea that his system came off of a much larger bracket of system, and you'll see this in the reading that I'm going to give you guys in class. But it starts off with kingdom, then it goes phylum, class, order, family, genus, and then species. So the last two categories are the most specific. So for humans, we're Homo sapiens, and if you look at the actual way that it's broken down, Homo is our genus and sapiens is our species. I do want to point out some little things that you need to know. Italicizing or underlining if you're handwriting all scientific names. You always capitalize the genus and you always lowercase the species. That's a way to indicate what is the genus and what is the species. And it's kind of like when you guys follow rules of grammar and things like that. So I do want to ask you, why get this specific? Why use two names to, I don't know, identify an organism? What is the purpose? Take a moment, write some stuff down, and we'll get back to it in a second. Now, hopefully you came up with some ideas. So let's go through it. Why are we getting this specific? Because some common names are actually misleading. See this little guy on the top, this seahorse? We call him a seahorse, but is he really anything related to a horse? I mean, yeah, he lives in the sea, but he's not related to a horse, which you find on the bottom picture. So it can be kind of misleading for most people. Also, scientific names are actually worldwide. So they're worldwide accepted, meaning it's almost like the metric system. Remember, everyone uses it. So everyone uses the scientific names the same way. Common names differ by language. So we may say human, but that's the Chinese character for human. So at least we have common language amongst all scientists, no matter where you are in the world. That's all for today, and we'll get back to it in the next lecture with modern taxonomy.